Welcome back to a new year here on One Comic Book a Day. If you haven't been watching this channel before, welcome. But we're going through every issue of Superman from the beginning. Well, every main issue Superman comic. We're probably not covering Justice League or World's Finest, unless we discover that something really important is happening in those comics. Originally, we weren't covering Superboy, but we are now covering Superboy from the beginning because a lot of characters come up in Superboy first, and also it's basically the same writing group. They're just kind of jumping around or basically being thrown whatever assignment is happening. So, how are we beginning this new year, an exciting new year looking at Superman? Well, we're starting with Adventure Comics 169, Clark Kent's Private Butler. So, he gets a butler. Look, I know it's not exciting, but if Batman gets a butler, Superman better get a butler. This is actually not the first time Clark has had a butler. He had a butler in that uncle story where his rich uncle adopted him. Or, well, he had to go with his rich uncle because his rich uncle had amnesia and thought Clark had agreed to it when he had never agreed to it. I bring up that story because it actually wasn't very difficult to deal with the butler. Because this butler story is just a version of a story we've gotten many times in Superman and Superboy, which is someone is going to be around him, making it harder for him to change into his secret identity, being Superboy here. And he has to figure out clever ways around that. And it's actually more difficult than that story usually is. Where my complaint is they don't actually make it very hard. He gets away with it pretty easily. And in fact, he actually thinks this one through even before the butler shows up. He puts in a special window in his bedroom so the butler couldn't be standing out there and just see him change, which actually does come up. So the Kents actually win this butler in some sort of competition. They're only going to get him for a short amount of time. None of the butlers actually want to do it because they're all snobby and who wants to work for a shopkeeper? Once again, if you're new here, during the Golden Age, Jonathan Kent, Clark's father, was a shopkeeper, not just a farmer. They seem to exist on a farm, but I haven't actually seen them do any farming. Actually, it's not always clear that they're on a farm. They could just be in a suburban house in Smallville. But he is a shopkeeper. And no one wants to work for a shopkeeper because of how low it is. But one guy agrees to it. But this butler is immediately thrown out of his butler society, which I guess is a thing. Never came up in Downton Abbey, but they were snobby. And just so happens, walking around Clark, not leaving him a second to change, he starts becoming suspicious that Clark might be Superboy because Superboy appears when Clark disappears. This is a classic conflict that has been true throughout Superman and Superboy. Even if you've never read a Superboy comic or even watched a movie, you've kind of understood the joke of Clark's gone, there's Superman. Superman's gone, hey Clark, where were you? Superman was just here. And that is going to be our conflict throughout. And I have to say that they do keep up the intensity of the conflict pretty well. He is generally nervous, and he has to think of semi-clever ways. It's not incredibly clever. It's not like he's using his powers in incredible ways to get around it. That would have made the story a little more exciting, and God forbid a story about him getting a butler be exciting. Actually, I don't even remember the feats. There's a house on fire at one point and a sign about to break, but that's about it. There's definitely a bigger moment where he has to repaint some benches. Wow, they really did not want this comic to be exciting, did they? And I do actually like that the climax of the story is the Kent saving him because he thinks he's screwed up so bad. The butler does indeed see his costume, but the Kents just tell him he has a costume, and he figures this out watching the butler. The butler actually gets accepted back into the society. You see, if he's the butler to Superboy, that would be enough for him to get back in because that's a prominent person, a famous prominent person to be a butler for. But he comes back and starts kicking the guys around for kicking him out and being snobs. In fact, you could kind of call this story Pride and Prejudice without the romance, but it is very much about Pride and Prejudice. He has a character arc. It's not like a great character arc. I wouldn't say he ever really has moments of learning the lesson other than he just learns the lesson. Sorry if you've been hearing tipping tapping of my dog. There was a squirrel at the window just a second ago trying to break in here. Made recording this very difficult. Anyway, the butler does learn a lesson. I guess there's a character arc, but not a lot of his conflict actually comes to him learning that lesson. I wouldn't say he has like a great moment of like, well, the Kents are just as noble as these rich people I'm following. But hey, you can't always get what you want from a Golden Age superhero comic. You're lucky that there is even the semblance of a character arc. So I think it's a perfectly fine, if not exciting, issue of Superboy. Okay, that is it from Adventure Comics 169. Haha, 69. Clark Kent's Private Butler. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe with the bell icon to get notifications when new videos up. I do this Monday through Friday, but Fridays is Bat Friday, where I cover Batman story either Detective Comics or Batman. And until next time, let's ponder the question, whatever did happen to the boy of tomorrow? And do you think Alfred belongs to a Butler society? Though he has the prestige of being Mr. Wayne's or Master Wayne and Master Dick. Butler. Okay, have a great day.